What makes BB sound like the king? It's not just Lucille, and you don't need to rush out and buy a Gibson 355. We're going to analyze 10 of the guitar habits of BB King, and I'll show you how you can incorporate those ideas into your own playing. Did you know that BB King rarely ever played chords? How is that possible? You know, I would never let any of my guitar students get away with avoiding playing chords. But you know, BB King sure could make a single note line sing. But at least for now, we can put aside all those chord shapes that we've learned over the years. Now, as part of this video, I'm offering all of you a free download from my website that contains exercises that will help you to explore all these stylistic habits of BB King. So you can go to my website. The direct link is in the description below. BB King habit number 1 is play fewer notes. You know, when I'm teaching soloing, I often tell my students to try to tell a story when they're soloing or when they're improvising. So for example, when you tell a story, you're going to say something and then you're going to pause slightly. If you don't have those pauses, your story is going to be hard to follow and probably really annoying. Now, some of this is particular to a genre. So for example, in bluegrass music, there's a lot of notes. In some eras of country music soloing, there's a lot of notes, right? And so some of this is particular to blues, but certainly BB King was very good at saying something and giving some pause. It's like putting a comma or a period at the end of your sentences. BB King guitar habit number 2, leave lots of space. Now this really goes hand in hand with the previous one, of course, but you'll find that when you listen to BB King finish a line, he really does often leave a lot of space. It's certainly more than a lot of other players, and it's certainly more than is my usual habit. My usual habit is I always want to fill up all the space. I want to use those hot licks that I've been practicing this past week, and I want to throw them everywhere and be flashy and impress people. So we have to force ourselves to leave a fair amount of space. I call this exercise 2 bars on, 2 bars off. It's a great way for gaining the habit of leaving some space between your lines. Of course, we wouldn't always leave 2 bars on, 2 bars off. We would need to vary that, and it would depend on the song. It might depend on the chord changes. But you know, a lot of the times it's the emptiness that makes the music sound as good as it does. And so we do have to give our audience some space to digest the cool things that we've just played. Or a great trick that you can do is when you start your solo, leave a lot of space. But as we gradually get through to the end of the solo, we tend to want it to sound more and more dramatic, more and more exciting. And one of the ways that we can do that is simply by adding more notes. BB King guitar habit number 3, loads of bends. It almost goes without saying, since we are talking about the blues genre, and the bend is one of the most bluesy things you can do on the guitar. It is like the cry. It is one of the most voice-like things we can do on guitar. I also listen to a lot of jazz guitar, and you know, in jazz guitar, those guys almost never bent a note, except for Herb Ellis. Herb Ellis, you know, he would bend a note every now and then. But even then, as soon as he does it, you always think, yeah, now it sounds like the blues, you know? I'm going to share with you a page from my latest book called Guitar Soloing Like a Pro that shows exactly where the best notes are to bend in this common minor pentatonic shape. If we think about this easy A minor pentatonic shape here from the 5th fret, and this is what the shape that we all first learn, right? Well, my best places to bend are where? It's going to be 7th fret of the G string, partly because that allows me to have my third finger there, which is very handy, but also because that particular note allows me to bend it a whole step or a half step. Why a half step? A half step because that's where the blue note is. So if I bend a half step, I get the really bluesy sound, or if I get the whole step, I get through the blue note and up to the next note in the scale. Another good note to bend is 8th fret of the B string and 8th fret of the high E. Well, isn't that lucky? Those are all notes that we can use our third finger on to bend. B.B. King guitar habit number 4, deep vibrato. This is something that people talk about a lot when they talk about B.B. King's guitar style, is his vibrato. Now first, just briefly, what is vibrato? Vibrato is when it's like a little tiny bend, but forwards and backwards. So we might end a line with a note that goes, right, it has that bend forwards and backwards, you can see. So what do I mean by deep vibrato? Well, some people's vibrato, like mine, is pretty subtle. That's just my habit, right? But for B.B. King, his habit is real deep. And we can even see, you know, how much further that string is going to move. It's just a stylistic choice, really. Like, either could be cool, and maybe even in some moments of a song, you might use a deeper vibrato than in other moments of a song. But, you know, as guitar players, we all have our own habits, and those habits kind of come from our personality a little bit, or they just come from the things that we've practiced. Like, how have I practiced vibrato over my life? Well, I probably haven't practiced very often doing really deep vibrato, because I know when I listen back to recordings of my own playing, I don't do deep vibrato a lot. But I do have a subtle style. But if we want to sound like BB, it's gotta be pretty deep vibrato. So a good way to do that is to try to play any kind of simple blues line, but end the line with one single note with that deep vibrato. B.B. King guitar habit number 5, lots of vibrato. And by this, I mean the frequency that he used vibrato as an effect. This is a stylistic choice, and it's a habitual choice. Sometimes we just get in the habit of putting vibrato over everything, and maybe it doesn't always need it, you know, but B.B. King definitely had the habit of ending his lines with vibrato a lot. So a good way you can practice this is, again, just put on a jam track and tell yourself specifically that every single line you do, you're going to end with some vibrato. Or maybe you'll even start a line with a note that hangs a little longer than you might usually and put vibrato on that. Or sometimes you can even put vibrato on a short little note. It doesn't always have to be the long held notes, right? B.B. King guitar habit number 6 is staccato. And what is staccato? Staccato is when we stop a note short. We don't let it ring for its entire duration. So a quarter note would stop short, and there would be a tiny bit of space after that. Now, this isn't necessarily something that B.B. King is doing all the time, but he has used it to great effect, and I think it's well worth mentioning, especially because it's right in one of his most famous songs ever, and it's right at the top of that song. If you have a listen to The Thrill Is Gone, the original recording, which I think is 1969 probably, and the first note you'll hear B.B. King play is, well, a held vibrato note, but then you hear this descending line of single notes that are all cut short. And it has this fantastic dramatic effect. You know, it sounds like he's really digging in, like he's really feeling it, like he really means it. And actually, the line is actually pretty simple. There's not that much to it, but making it staccato like that just has so much coolness, is so much character in that line. Now, I'm not going to play that line from Thriller's Gone exactly as it is on the recording because I don't want to get a YouTube copyright strike. But just to give you an example of what it's like, the first note we hear is that held vibrato, right? And then we get the line that's like, something like that, right? B.B. King guitar habit number 7. Not that much travel on the fretboard. You know, if you look at some of the tabs of B.B. King's solos, you'll see he's not moving up and down the fretboard that much at all. He often picks a little space and just creates fantastic melodies out of that little space. And, you know, again, that's not something that all of us do. A lot of the times we start to feel like, oh, if I just stay in this space, maybe I'm being boring, you know? And I gotta be flying up and down the fretboard all the time because then I'm gonna keep my audience interested. But flying up and down the fretboard doesn't necessarily make for great melody. And in the blues genre, that's what we want a lot of. We want great melody. That's what we're looking for. And certainly that's what B.B. King knew how to do. You know, he would pick a little space of 5 notes. And I mean, that's the pentatonic right there. That's almost all you need. Maybe put it in a little blue note. Of course, all your other tricks, your vibrato. And you've got a pretty sweet little space. You've got enough to make some really engaging melodies if you really put your mind to it. B.B. King guitar habit number 8. Focus on the root. It's amazing how much B.B. King will go back to the root over and over and over again. But why not? You know, if we talk about giving space and we talk about using like commas or periods as a metaphor for leaving that space and telling a story, the root is a great period at the end of a sentence, right? It makes any line feel complete. So how do we get good at that? Well, we have to memorize where those roots are, right? A lot of people, they kind of know the sound, they just kind of memorize pentatonic in terms of, well, that one sounds good there, whatever. But we want to memorize where the roots are so that we can go there with more purpose when we really mean to go there, right? So here's my 5th fret, A. If I'm in A minor pentatonic, of course, that's my root. Well, we do know that because that's where we start all the time, right? But if you think of your octave shapes, there's another root there, right? So I can end a lot of my phrases right there, 7th fret of the D string. So if I just play a really basic, right, it feels finished when I hit that note. Where's another root? Well, that makes sense, of course, because they're both E strings, so they're both A's. So I could play a simple line from there. And there's that resolve when I hit that root. But another really great root is actually up here in what I call the extension shape. So here's that's my minor pentatonic. There, 10th fret of the B string. And it's easier to put vibrato on the B string than it is on the E string anyway. So that's a great spot. We could be here in our 5th fret position, but then just jump up to that fret there for that resolve, right? Or stay in this little extension shape here and resolve a lot of our lines with that root, which again just makes it sound like we're giving that kind of pause, that kind of resolve and finish. B.B. King guitar habit number 9. Using both major and minor pentatonic and mixing them back and forth. B.B. King was really skilled at doing this. So first, let's just get a little bit of the theory out of the way in case you're not familiar with this. It's very common for us to be playing minor pentatonic scale over the 12-bar blues form. Well, the 12-bar blues form is actually a major key. So why are we playing minor pentatonic over this major key? I've got more about this kind of stuff in my book, Guitar Soloing Like a Pro, and I'm going to put the link in the bottom there for you. But theoretically, using the minor scale over a major chord shouldn't work. But the blues guys have been doing it for over 100 years, and they do it because it sounds great. And our ears are used to it now, right? It's the sound of blues, it's the sound of rock and roll. But since the chord underneath is major, well, we can use major pentatonic. Why not? Of course we can. So let's talk about where do we get major pentatonic from? Well, we're going to stay in A here. Here's my 5th fret A again. I've got a special trick for finding major pentatonic that I teach to all my guitar students. And that is, if I start this easy pentatonic shape with my first finger, that's minor pentatonic. Well, watch this. If I just put my pinky on that note, and then I play the exact same shape, though, from there. So I'm here, playing my easy shape. Well, what is that now? That's A major pentatonic. Wow, how easy. The only thing is I have to remember my root is here with my pinky. My root is not there. That's F sharp, right? You can hear it resolves there. There's the blue note in there. I played, right? So B.B. King was a master at being able to switch back and forth between major and minor pentatonic almost instantly, well, effortlessly. Keep in mind that with his famous song, The Thrill Is Gone, this method will not work. Why? Because The Thrill Is Gone is in B minor. So when we have a minor key underneath, or a minor chord underneath, we cannot use the major pentatonic over top of that. That's not going to work. But this method is certainly going to work for any song where the key is inherently major underneath or the chord is major underneath, like his song, Every Day I Have the Blues. You can go crazy with this technique over this. So I showed you the first finger pinky trick, but, and that works great because I could say I could walk up major pentatonic here, and then I could slide up to the minor pentatonic. Not bad, right? You can hear that difference. I'll do the major again. Now the minor. Right? It really has a different sound to it. That when I go to that minor pentatonic, it really sounds bluesy. To me, it really sounds rock and roll, you know? And the major is kind of sweet. So let's look at another way that you can do this so that the major is right underneath your fingers here from the 5th fret on. So again, this is my first finger on the 5th fret. This is minor pentatonic. Right? Now let's think of if major pentatonic is here, then the extension shape would be here. Right? So let's look at this. I'm in minor pentatonic, but now I could go to major. There's my root, right? So I could go major, and then I could go minor. Guitar habits number 10. Here's another little area where we can do the switch major and minor back and forth. Sometimes people call this the B.B. King box. Well, there at 10th fret of my B string is an A, so that's my root of my A major pentatonic, or A minor pentatonic if you will, right? So now let's look at this little tiny area up here in major pentatonic. I got 3 notes. And my first finger is my root. That sounds like B.B. King for sure. Whoops. Now, if I just move this one note, ooh, that's minor pentatonic. Okay, that didn't sound like B.B. King, but just to show you back and forth what that little switch is, right? So this is major, and then I can go minor, major, right? Actually, this one, we're gonna talk about B.B. King guitar tone, because I know that's what all you guitar tone nerds want to hear a little about. Well, of course, he owned Lucille, which was a Gibson 355, but I mean, really, you can use any humbucker guitar is gonna work. You're gonna be able to get something pretty close. The thing is, that guitar is pretty unique. I mean, they still make them, you can buy it, but not a lot of people really have those lying around. If you want something really close to that and you got the money, go out and buy a Gibson 335 that's very similar, and you're gonna get some pretty similar tones out of that. Now, good luck finding B.B. King's favorite amp, because they don't make it anymore. But his favorite amp was a Lab Series L5, which was a solid state amp, so it was not a tube amp. But he loved that amp. His second favorite, however, was a Fender Deluxe, or any kind of like a Fender Twin, or some kind of classic Fender sound. But that was his backup amp, you know? He loved that L5 solid state amp. I mean, hey, he sounded good. Here's another cool thing about playing B.B. King's guitar tone is you don't need any pedals. You can plug that guitar straight into that amp. Just turn on a little bit of the spring reverb, and you're good to go. Now, one more last bonus tip about how to sound like B.B. King. This one's a bit of a trick one, and that is that B.B. King was an amazing singer. And it's funny that we don't talk about that as much. We always talk about B.B. King's guitar playing, understandably great, but he was also a phenomenal singer, and he could deliver lines just with his voice just as well as he could with his guitar. Now, I guess that's not necessarily a lot of help to a lot of us. Can I sing like B.B. King? No. I think I'm gonna stick with the guitar for now on that point. And just remember, you can download a free set of exercises from my website that will help you to practice all these guitar habits that B.B. King had. You can download that from my website, and the link is in the description below.